Hey, hello, welcome back to this wonderful place of discussing ideas of Dracula and vampires. And I am joined today, as always, with the wonderful presence of Magdalena Grabias from
Hi.
Poland. How it is pronounced in Poland in Polish?
My name, you did it correctly,
Yeah,
actually. It's
I,
Magdalena Grabias, yes.
Grabias. I'm better in my Polish right now.
You're getting better every week. Yes, it's great.
Wonderful. And with my great amigo from Brazil, Yuri Garcia. Hey, Yuri, how are you?
I'm fine. Thank you for calling me Judy. I had an aunt in the past that liked to call me Judy because of some Spanish course that she was doing or something like this, and it gave me nostalgical thoughts over here.
Oh, wonderful, wonderful. So, how you been, guys? Everything's cool?
Yes,
Yes,
everything
everything's
okay.
fine. Yeah, so how is it pronounced? Because I'm thinking about you as Yuri.
Yuri is a very British way of talking. It's actually Yuri,
Alright. Yuri.
but in Spain it's Judy that they say.
Yeah.
And I had this aunt that called me Judy, so I was used to it. And now Enrique
You went
calling me.
to that
Brought
moment.
it back.
Wonderful, guys.
I'm used to Yuri, like you call me, or Yuri, like people in Brazil call me. The Spanish way is more rare to hear in my life.
Wonderful. Okay. So, today let's have a discussion about one of the greatest characters of the book, if you may. Let's talk about Jonathan Harker. How about that?
Great idea. Jonathan Harker is a very ambivalent character when we talk about the book and the movies, because he's very interesting in some ways and very uninteresting in others. So it is nice for us to talk to with this other very chameleonic character that we have.
Yeah. How about you, Magda? How do you think in first impression of Jonathan Harker?
First of all, what comes to my mind is he's a very important character
Yeah.
in the novel and the films as well, but it depends on the director and on the vision, of course. But in the book, he is the one. Through his eyes, we are looking at the castle of Dracula, and the first meeting with Dracula actually is also from his perspective. So he kind of directs us to how we see the Count for the first time. And it actually stays for quite a long time of all his stay in Castle Dracula, and we are hearing about the Count from his accounts of the stay in the castle. So I think that a lot is presented through his eyes, and I'm wondering what Yuri started talking about this character, and why do you think that he's ambivalent?
No, not in the book. In the book, I totally agree with you. I think that Jonathan Harker is essential in the book by all of these means, and also I think that Jonathan Harker is the character that bears in his body the most rich part of Dracula's story.
Yeah.
He passes through lots of things, and he's probably the one who passes through the worst things and maintains alive. But he gets mad. He gets uh, all uh, worked out and all uh, destroyed. But it is interesting because we talk a lot about cinematic Dracula as well.
Mm-hmm.
It's also always a topic over here, and Jonathan Harker is very ambivalent in cinema for me because he is used to be a very, in my opinion, uninteresting character in cinema.
In cinema, yeah.
This is the ambivalent part for me of Jonathan Harker. In some movies, of course, you have some interesting Jonathan Harkers, but in most of them, I think that it's a very uninteresting character. I think that in movies, Van Helsing gets some space,
More attention,
more
yes.
space than he has in the book, and Jonathan Harker gets less space. So I think this is a very interesting thing in Dracula's narrative transmediatically.
Well, I think that he disappears in a way. Sorry, Enrique, I stole
No,
your
no,
time.
no, no.
He disappears in the cinema a lot, or shifts back into the background of the story,
Yeah,
because we actually have Dracula in person in the movies.
yeah.
Because in the novel, as I said, that we look at Dracula through his narratives for quite a long time at the very beginning, and of course, in the visual media, we right away have Dracula in front of our eyes. So Dracula, Jonathan Harker is. Well, I can't say that he's not that important, but he is a little bit overshadowed, let's say, by the current, because he's already there. So it's a different way of this different narrative, simply different way of telling a story in the visual media. Yeah.
That is very interesting, because in Jonathan Harker we have the one character who is from the start, until the finish, and he is present all along the novel, in a way, because when he is lost in coming back to London, we still have his presence in Mina's writings, because constantly he is named, or constantly he is remembered. So Jonathan Harker is a very specific presence. I can guess the most important one in the entire novel, not the most important character, but as a presence, I mean.
I think that yeah, I agree. I think that he's very present in the whole novel. And the thing that we were talking about, his disappearance in cinema, that is interesting. I think that we have this narrative component that Magda said, but I think that we also have some inability to transform Jonathan Harker in a humane character. I think he's a very stereotype character in all of the movies. He's always this image of the right guy in the Victorian
Handsome
way
right guy
that is going to marry, and something happens. It's very stereotypical, his characterization in all of the movies, and the human side over there, that would be interesting for us to see, because he's the great victim from the count, and in this intense part of the narrative is never put in an interesting way as a human that passed through this, but always as a stereotypical character that passed through these sufferings, and now is trying to restore order, like we were talking in the last video. He's always this very conservative stereotype that we have over there. And this is such a shame for the character, because it loses all of his complexity and his possibilities.
Well, yes. Well, fortunately, it doesn't happen in all the productions, because there is so many, so we can choose. We have a vast choice. But I agree that most of the time it's what you are saying. What springs to my mind right away is the production that I've been researching for quite a while, since it went out quite recently, so 2020, and I keep mentioning it over and over again. But it's really there are a lot of very interesting elements, and one of these elements in the production by Stephen Moffat and Margatis, is how they presented Jonathan Harker. And he actually comes across, I don't know if you remember, guys, but he comes across as a much stronger character in this BBC production. He actually, at the very end, because he appears mostly in the first episode. He has a moment in the second episode, but he actually all the first episode is the interaction between Harker and Dracula, and at the very end, before he manages to escape the castle, he actually opposes. He really shows tremendous strength with realizing the whole situation and the character, and that he's probably going to die very soon. But he actually raises up and tells that he's never going to succumb to what Dracula wants. And what Dracula wants is to make him his bride in this production, if you remember.
I just seen this production once, so I can be a little inaccurate about some details. But one thing that I thought it was very fascinating in this production was the first episode. I was a little divided in other episodes, but the first episode was something that I thought was fascinating.
Yeah.
And this is probably one of the reasons that the first episode got so interesting. Is because it looks like it's the first time in audiovisual media that people think about the relation between Jonathan Harker and Dracula as an interaction of two characters, because it's so Jonathan Harker is always treated like the spoken victim of the monster. It's always like this. He's always somebody that's terrified, and they forget that there's an interaction over there, and this terrifying is something that is constructed through a relation that starts with a very hierarchical relation in the boss and employer employee manner. But also has a very a certain equality, because it starts as a relation between two people, two men in a very sexist period of England and Europe. So there is this relation that is constructed until it becomes the terrifying part, and also the battle that he puts on because he survives, that is not constructed in other audiovisual ways, and this BBC series was very interesting in this way, because they were thinking for the first time that, well, this could be something very good. This could be something that would enrich the narrative.
Yeah. I cannot help thinking of what you just mentioned about these relations between Jonathan Harker and Dracula. And once I spoke with Dacre Stoker, and we developed this concept that Bram Stoker is got a reflection of himself in Jonathan Harker character, as there are so many figures that are reflected in the novel, like Henry Irving maybe can be a reflection of Count Dracula. In the same way, Bram Stoker can be very close related to Jonathan Harker. And on the other way, and in the same way, as Bram Stoker original work have been fading away because of media, because of these new narratives, because all these new creators that are creating new Dracula stories, Bram Stoker's is fading somehow. The same happens with Jonathan Harker, I'm thinking.
Perhaps, but I would like to point one thing, that this thought that you had with the Stoker is very interesting. It makes a lot of sense, and I was thinking about this. Perhaps we could, of course, this is a speculation about that we as admirers of the novel and of the character are making. There's no no scientific basis in this, but this is what we could think. At least I just thought about this now, that we have Henry Irving as Dracula as this extension, and Bram Stoker as Jonathan Harker makes lots of sense. And especially when we think about the team that is going to reunite with Jonathan Harker, that this is probably the team of interests that Bram Stoker had in the moment. Maybe the North American United States culture was something that interested him, especially this cowboy and Wild West incorporation that we have in Quincy. And Dr. Seward and Van Helsing as the medical and the scientific part. That was something that was becoming very strong over there in Europe in that moment. So probably we have, as this metaphor of Bram Stoker as Jonathan Harker, we have also those other components over there as Bram Stoker's interest, and things that he liked, and
Yeah.
maybe he thought that would be helpful for him to defeat the vampire.
Yeah.
So it's quite a diverse universe that he created with these characters alone, isn't it? It's
Definitely.
representative of various cultures, and Van Helsing coming from the Netherlands. So we have all sorts of cultural elements combined as well. Yeah.
Yeah, and they all represent this part of the civilization of the time of the book was written. No, the civilized world, the well-established world.
Oh yes, against we were talking about it as well, against this Far East, which is mysterious and unknown and uncharted to some extent.
Okay, and how do you feel about the ending of the novel and the role that Jonathan Harker play and at the end? And let's talk about the final note that he gave us in the novel.
So you want us to spoil the novel?
Yeah, definitely. Let's do this.
You start. You go first.
I need to get back to the final note, because what is the final note that Jonathan Harker said?
Oh, he mentioned that he traveled again to the same side where the all things happened, and they like have like a tourism voyage with all the family, to the site to sightseeing the place. More words. I mean, he wrote it better than I just described.
I think it's a very typical happy ending in this way. Maybe the arc of Jonathan Harker doesn't finish as interesting as it begins, because, in my opinion, at least, because it starts very strange. He's this person passing through experiences that are strange and impacting in his life. And these experiences are going to defeat him and encourage him and modulate his personality, his physicality, and all of this. And in the end, when he is able to defeat his adversary, he goes back to his normal life, enters in a very normative and expected way of living over there. And the end of the book looks like that advertisement, that very typical advertisement of a happy family having their breakfast together.
Yeah.
So in this way, it's kind of disappointing because not that I don't think that Jonathan Harker deserves to be happy in the end.
Yeah.
He really deserves, but it's
Oh,
I don't know. I think I expect more from this
Yeah.
traumatic issue. I imagine at least a happy ending that was difficult. He's going to have traumas for the rest of his life. But no, he's just doing sightseeing Transylvania and moving on. So any person would be traumatized by this experience, but not Jonathan Harker. Life goes on and everything is cool.
and
Nothing.
that only proves how tough a character he is. He's a badass to some extent.
Yeah.
He manages to go through it and still have happy family and a happy ending for himself. That's actually admirable. I like it. I never thought about it before, but now that you're painting this picture, Yuri, that's what comes to my mind. But we were talking about this restoring the order, and that's actually the pattern that reaches back to ancient times and literature in ancient patterns. That we have this order first of all destroyed, and then through the peripetia and all sorts of other things that happen to the characters, and in the end, the order is usually restored, and that's how it looks like. And when you're putting it like this, that they are going to revisit the site. It's almost like I can see the cinematic vision of that. That it's like taking kids to show them a film in the cinema. Actually, let's take it to another level. It's right away. It's a genius of Stoker because he managed to project a cinematic vision at the moment when the cinema was being born.
Yeah.
That's I think that's wonderful. No, it is very typical for the period as well. So
Definitely.
it's couldn't end. It probably couldn't end differently at that time.
Yeah.
Well, that's a part of the charm, in my opinion.
Yeah. But we need to remember, talking about the happy ending of Jonathan Harker, that he got rich in the novel. He and Mina became the only successful hereditaries of the Mr. Hawkins' fortune. So in the end, he have it all. He got the woman, he got the money, he got the experience, and the sightseeing of Transylvania.
Yeah,
I don't disagree. I have with the happy ending. I think that happy endings are common in books and movies and all of this. The impact that the happy ending of this novel has on me is the fact that it's such a different novel all over. It's so different. The Castle Dracula has a very intense. It has a very intense part. It's very intense, that part, and the descriptions are very terrifying and gothic. And then you have this miscellaneous of communications and diaries and journals and everything to change points of views and never focusing and never changing the way that you are narrating the appearance of the vampire. So I think it's a book that was very different in lots of ways, and the happy ending for me in this book, it's like it's something for me that I understand. It's a gothic novel, so you have to restore the order and everything. But this happy ending, it's a little strange for me because I feel like this book was going through lots of different ways and complicated aspects and deconstructing lots of things, and in the end it gets really similar to all of the other ones. I basically I love the book, but I think that the end of the book is where I start having a few problems with the book, where I don't think the book is terrific. The 100% that I think of all the book, maybe the end is where I think that it loses a little of the pace. Not that it becomes bad, but it's not as good as the rest.
I'm with you, definitely in that thought. Magda,
Magda's still deciding.
Yeah.
Can you tell by the look of my face?
I saw you doing like this.
Okay,
Magda's thinking about this.
That's my thinking face. Okay, right. Yeah, I was actually listening carefully to what you were saying because another thing popped into my head. I'm far from criticizing the ending and what's happened there because, as I said, it's in a way it was easy to predict that. It is easy to predict from our perspective, at least, that it's a Victorian piece and it's going to follow some patterns. Especially, actually, that it's a Gothic novel. Romance is an intrinsic part of Gothic novels. And okay, so maybe the familial element at the very end, as I understand from what you're saying, is a little bit too much. Although, again, as with Twilight, I'm happy to go with it because I really like various twists and turns. And if things go too far and create some commotion among viewers or readers here, but another thing that came to my mind, referring to what Yuri said, is that actually, yes, you're absolutely right. That it's a different. At some point, it becomes a very different narrative that from which it started, and again, getting back to the 2020 production, BBC production, have a look what they did. So they started with a quintessentially Gothic narrative that everyone loves. This first episode and the second episode is something that everyone is in love with. But then comes something completely different. Changes the tone, changes the time, so they jump into the 21st century, and everyone hates it, apart from me, of course. And it's in a way the same operation that's happening here. So the writers jumped from what we know and expect something completely different.
But that normally happens with media, and with Jonathan Harker, it's very let's say unique. The way he has a strange relations with another character, which is Renfield, in some films. They have been interchanged one for each other, and they have been speculations in the media that Renfield was the first guest in Dracula's castle. And he was first, and he was the antecessor of Jonathan Harker, and I really don't understand why that is that a thought, but maybe it has to be related with Dracula's guest, because we have an unnamed character that we suppose it's Jonathan Harker, but it leaves like a fill the blanks to put Renfield in there. Maybe that is where all the new directors got the idea of these relations between Jonathan Harker and Renfield.
I think that all of the books, all of the narratives and works of art, they are open to some interpretation, and they are open with some blank spots. And the transmediatic aspect of these works of art uses a lot of these blank spots to create and modify a few elements. So I think that the blank spots that Bram Stoker has in the narratives, Dracula and in Dracula's Guest is what makes these inventions and these new proposals not only possible but plausible. Uh, and this reminds me that you were talking about Renfield. Some narratives don't use Jonathan Harker; they just use Renfield.
Mm-hmm.
I was remembering one in specific because it's a movie that I particularly love. I think it's a great Dracula movie. That is Mel Brooks' Dracula.
Yeah.
I think it's a great Dracula.
Yeah.
And it's more or less the first time that you have this Jonathan Harker character with more space in the narrative, but it is not Jonathan Harker, it's Renfield. So it is very interesting. It's the first time that you see Jonathan Harker, especially the visual that you have from Jonathan Harker in this book is from Renfield in this movie is based in the presentation of Jonathan Harker in Coppola's movie. So that's something really really interesting. The first time that you have this very not dominant but very present Jonathan Harker in a Dracula movie, he's called Renfield. So it's something that's interesting for us to think. And about this BBC series, I think that the great thing that impacted the audience in the BBC series is that it was very close to the Dracula novel. Normally, the movies, they are very creative, and then we see a series. I was watching this series and saying, wow.
You're talking about the 70s.
Interesting.
No,
the one that Magda talked now. This
okay.
It was very close to the novel in the beginning, and then they start loosely each chapter giving more freedom, and then they went it's a total freedom.
They went berserk
over there. That makes sense for me. It makes sense for me in a narrative aspect, but the audience is more difficult. The audience is very faithful to the original source sometimes, and other times they are an audience. They are mainstream, and they have the necessity sometimes of a happy ending. We are talking about a series that was very commercial, so this very transgressive and different aspect of the series is going to be complicated for some audiences.
Yeah, definitely. Talking about the audiences, how do you feel about casting Keanu Reeves as Jonathan Harker? Because that was a casting for the audiences, definitely.
I think it was a waste of Keanu's Reeves possibility of fighting, because Keanu Reeves is a great John Wick, and Jonathan Harker doesn't fight. So I think we could use maybe leave Keanu Reeves in other movies.
Yeah, I think that it was before.
It was before John Wick
and Matrix and all that.
Yeah, I like Keanu Reeves nowadays. I think he became a very interesting niche actor. He's very interesting doing his John Wick movies and all of the other fighting movies, and he became very emblematic in the sci-fi movies with Matrix. And before, I've seen a movie with him that I loved. Most people hated, that was Johnny Mnemonic or something.
Johnny Mnemonic,
I like this movie. I think it's a very, very interesting movie. So Keanu Reeves has this figure image that he constructed in the contemporary site, and he came from that Bill and Ted and I forgot the name in English of that movie that he has with Patrick Swayze.
The Surfer.
Yeah, The Surfer. In Portuguese, it's Caçadores de
Emoção. Point Break.
Exactly. So he has that background over there. But the thing is, when I don't like him as a Jonathan Harker, because that was probably a phase that Keanu Reeves wasn't a good actor, wasn't very expressive. So we have zero expressive Jonathan Harker. He's basically just that what we've talked about before, the stereotype of that. And then you have Gary Oldman and then Anthony Hopkins as Van Helsing.
Very powerful
and Dracula. It's something over there, very high, and then you have this Keanu Reeves with in a phase that he wasn't very.
There's no competition.
Yes, and Winona Ryder, a very good actress as well. So we Keanu Reeves is very. I think in this case, I like Keanu Reeves. I have nothing against him, but I think that for this movie, he was not a very good casting.
Okay. How about you feel, Magda?
I have to disagree as always.
Wonderful.
Sorry about that. Well, as we said, that Jonathan Harker is a tricky character to play, because if the director and writer chooses to go into this stereotypical way as he is presented in the novel as well, then that's what you're getting. But especially that he got paired with actors like Anthony Hopkins and Gary Oldman. And Keanu Reeves is a handsome guy, and I can assure you that all the female part of the audience loved the casting. Because it was just a nice...
He's like Edward Cullen.
Sorry?
He's like Edward Cullen.
Yeah.
Amen.
Well, and that was interesting casting, because he wasn't a contrast at all. Just the opposite. He was, I think, in the same league than Gary Oldman, who was a very attractive and handsome Dracula as well.
Yeah.
So, and if we are thinking about the romantic tensions, which was the big part of this movie, I think that was the right person to choose. And at the same time, he had to be a little bit.
No, you're probably
again,
right.
In the background.
Because that is not a horror movie. That is a romantic movie. In that order, you're completely right.
Yes. He enters in the antagonist of the romantic pair, the romantic couple, very well in this aspect. In this reading of Magda, I totally agree. But one thing that I think it loses a lot is that thing that we were talking about, the interaction between Dracula and Jonathan Harker, because the interactions between Gary Oldman and Anthony Hopkins are very good. They're two very good actors. The interactions between Keanu Reeves and Gary Oldman are very, very weak.
They are not balanced.
Yes, and I think that the scenes of Keanu Reeves and the wives, that is a very impacting, imagetic scene. It loses a lot. It loses a lot due to some not very dedicated acting, or I don't know. It was not a good moment for Keanu Reeves over there.
I've never thought about it.
It's difficult for me to talk about this, because I'm a great fan of John Wick. Great fan. I think John Wick is terrific, and I think Keanu Reeves is terrific.
I completely agree with you.
It's difficult for me to talk about but it's difficult. But I think it's something that in that movie, what I think it's the worst part of the movie for me is Keanu Reeves, actually.
But on the other hand, he was
Reeves with his white hair is the worst part of the movie.
Oh, come on. He was there to create this contrast, that we have all these powerful, interesting characters, and then there is a guy who is normal and almost boring, as you say. So if you read him like that, then it's perfectly all right.
But I completely agree with Yuri. Is one of his weakest characters in films.
Well, how are you going to compare John Wick and Matrix to his role of Jonathan Harker in Dracula. How did we get to the? I mean, yeah, okay, we're talking about the character, for goodness sake, not about the actor right here. So when you think about it, what came to my mind is a very similar relationship and choice of characters and actors what follows in The Phantom of the Opera, if you know this book and these films, maybe.
Yeah.
We have the Phantom, who is also charismatic and the equivalent of Dracula here, and supernatural and all that. And on the other hand, there is a guy who is a romantic interest and handsome and slightly boring, and nobody wants Christine to end up with him because there is Phantom, who is wonderful and strong and so on. So I think that it's the same kind of character, actually. I mean, again, it's the thought that just came to my mind, but I think that this is we can compare these characters.
Yeah.
Although for Raoul doesn't end as miserable as Jonathan Harker, at least in the middle.
I agree with you, Magda. I just think that maybe a casting with an actor that at that moment could bring more would be more interesting, because I think in the same aspect I can compare with, for example, of course, this stereotype of the antagonist of the main couple. It is very common that it's a character that you're not going to cheer for. But one example that I think it's not a horror movie, of course. You brought Phantom of the Opera. That's a horror movie and a horror book. Yeah. But I was thinking about one case that I think is very interesting is Beauty and the Beast.
Yeah.
Because the main couple over there is Beauty and the Beast. And you have the character of Gaston. And Gaston's a very interesting character as an antagonist from the Beast. And it's nobody wants Beauty to stay with Gaston, but Gaston is very interesting. And the last movie that they made about of Beauty and the Beast, that one, the live action movie. I hated the Beast. I thought the Beast was. I think that 50% of the movie is good because the other 50 is the Beast, and the Beast is terrible. The actor that made the Beast was terrible, and I think that the whole conception of the Beast was not very good. But Beauty is great, and Gaston is incredible in that movie. And he's very incredible in that movie. He's perhaps for me one of the best parts of the movie. And I was never cheering for Gaston to stay with her in the end. So I think there are ways of you to and it was Luke Evans that it's Dracula Untold as well. But he's a great actor. At least I think he's a very good actor. He has some good moments in cinema. And Gaston was one example of them.
But it's a different kind of character, isn't it? He's conceited, boastful. He's a ladies' man in the first place, and Jonathan Harker is right away painted like a normal guy, an ordinary guy, a representative of someone of a lawyer here. So a little bit boring. And he was supposed to be like that, so I think that's job well done, Keanu.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I think we got the Jonathan Harker covered for today. One final moment for our dear Jonathan Harker, which we need to mention in the real time reading. Jonathan Harker, who is one of my favorite characters in the book, he's now stuck in the castle right now, trying to make his escape. So, any final thought on him?
Start, Magda.
Okay, on Jonathan Harker. Well, after the whole conversation that we've just had, I must say that actually, when you think about it more and more carefully, he emerges as much more interesting character than we probably have the impression after the first reading of the book, because he's much more complex. And as you say, even the ending that Yuri hates, or at least dislikes, only confirms that, in fact, against the fact that you cannot really see it into your face when you're reading a book or watching films most of the time, he's quite a strong character, and he's the one that survives the whole thing. So I think that he's quite a badass, although I've never thought about it before until now.
That is the way he should be remembered, like a badass. Yuri.
I think that Jonathan Harker is perhaps the most symbolic character of the book, especially because of his dualism with Dracula. And some movies has passed this with an extremely terrific way. For example, Nosferatu of Herzog. Jonathan Dracula is a representation of the aristocratic class, and Jonathan Harker is a representative of the bourgeois class. And the fact that he's the one that wins Dracula in the end is very important. Is very suggestive. And Herzog's movie presents Harker. Now, I don't know. I don't remember if the character's name is Harker, but it's
Harker. Harker is in the 22 version, but in Herzog it's Harker.
Harker becoming the vampire in the end, and this Herzog got a very he has he puts his mind in a 79 movie, so it's a more mature mind about the relation between aristocracy and the bourgeois class. Herzog puts it more advanced at showing it as a substitution in the predatorial aspect. But Bram Stoker, despite the fact that he was not perhaps thinking in terms of substitution, it is very clear that we have this presentation in terms of winning. So you have the bourgeois class winning the aristocratic class in the end. And Jonathan Harker, he's a badass. He is the character that is presented in the whole book, and in the end wins Dracula. So this is very representative in the novel for me, and some movies could use this very good.
They should. They definitely should. So, okay, guys, that's it for today. Thank you for this great conversation about this great character, Jonathan Harker. And let's see us here next week. Thank you, Yuri.
See you next week. Thank you very much for having us again.
Thank you very much, guys. It was great. See you all next week.
See you soon, Magda.
Bye. See you.
Ciao. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you.